Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Tales of the LGBTQ. My name is Douglas Parsons. For you listening, it may not have seemed to have been a break since the last time we came together, but for me, it's been 3.5 weeks. I put a stop or a hiatus to the podcast simply due to work commitments. I began a contract with the city of Edmonton in the training running of the election that is coming up when it comes to the voters. And it's been a fun ride. It's been fantastic, but it's taken me away from doing this podcast, a podcast that I really love and enjoy. So I'm thrilled to be back in the chair, being able to interview the fantastic people that make up our rainbow community. Tonight, we have Jocelyn Lapointe and Ashley Allen, who are going to talk about their love story, as well as a cause that is close to their heart and they strive towards solving every single day. I look forward to meeting them and learning all about them. I'm confident that I'm going to become smitten with both of them here tonight, as will you. Before we start that interview, I always want to start off by acknowledging that I learn and work on Treaty 6 and Métis ancestral lands, the traditional gathering place for many Indigenous peoples. This is where we will strive to honor and transform our relationship with one another. This is where I listen, learn, and through that, understand. Be able to develop space for everyone is what I'm striving for every single day. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to make mention of. And one is the Edmonton elections that is coming up. And that the plan was that I would be interviewing some of the many LGBTQ plus political candidates running for office. But because of my job, I'm unable to give you that information, discuss that information, which is probably a good thing for my Facebook friends and Twitter friends because I am very opinionated. And for the last month, I have been muted. And that also involves some of the provincial and federal things that are going on. So come on October 29th, when that contract is over, the world's going to hear from my political views once again. So look forward to that. And you can take me off of mute on Facebook at that point. During this time as well, I've been able to continue working with a group that I helped to organize, which is Pride Corner on White. Every Friday evening, myself and others are out there creating a dance party. It's a way for us to be able to show unhoused LGBTQ plus youth that when the time is right for them, that there is a chosen family out there who will love them with open arms. We were only going to do this for 3 or 4 weeks during Pride Month. It has taken a life upon itself, and we're still out there, and we're going to be continuing to do that throughout the winter. We're figuring things out as we go. More and more people, youths, adults, are coming out, joining us. With that, it is counter-protesting or simply protesting the street preachers. Edmonton has rallied. We've received over 10,000 names, signatures for our change.org. Old Strathcona Business Association has stepped forward to support our efforts and are working with us with the city of Edmonton in the renaming of that corner to Pride Corner. I say that because I'm proud of everything that we've done. But I also want to mention some very sad news that has affected our group itself. One of our youths, early adults who have come to our corner every single week, did commit suicide last night. And as a group, we are struggling. We're struggling with what to do and how to handle the situations. I don't want to go into great details, but I can tell you they were loved. by their blood family as well as the chosen family that we have out on the street. And their heart is, our hearts are broken tonight, and I'm not sure how we're going to recover as we move forward. I do want to make mention of a couple of things, though. Kids Help Phone is available for you if you feel that you have no one to turn to. That phone number is 1-800-668-6868, or you can text the word connect to 686-868. That information will be posted everywhere where this broadcast will be held. In addition to that, there is a crisis and mental health support for trans people. The website is translifeline.org. The phone number 1-877-330-6366. And through our friends at AltView, they have suggested another hotline for you to contact. In fact, it's Edmonton's first mental health and wellness helpline for the LGBTQ2S plus community. It's available 24 hours. Its name is Brightline, Briteline, brightline.ca. The phone number is 1-844-702-7483. Those are some phone numbers if you are having mental anxiety, mental stress, and you need someone to talk to. Please reach out to a friend. Please reach out to someone who you trust to listen and simply keep space with you during this time. You are important. You are needed. And we need to make sure that your wings fly here on earth as well. But to you tonight, who are listening, I just want to share the words of an Indigenous elder, Duwamish, who said, "There is no death, only a change of worlds." As you transition to the new world, I want you to know how much you are loved, how much you are needed, and how much we will always remember you. So thank you for those memories. Whew. Let's move on to our guest tonight, and let's move on to their story. Awkward transition, I know, but I just wanted to make sure that information was said. So let's introduce you to tonight's guests, Jocelyn Lapointe and Ashley Allen. Let's bring them onto the screen here at the moment. Welcome to Tales of the LGBTQ+.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And as I mentioned before we went on air, there's a few things I needed to mention. And in my head, I'm thinking, I need to say it, but it's an awkward beginning. And so I apologize. But at the same time, I have an understanding that you understand as well. And so I appreciate this time that we're going to spend with each other here tonight. So let me shake off a little bit. Let me turn this mic up a little bit. No Barbara Walters crying moments here. And if it does happen, please zoom in on the tears on the cheeks, because that is the money moment, so to speak. Let's just go with it. I don't know. Jocelyn and Ashley, you were introduced to me by a common friend, Jonathan, who has been a great support of Tales of the LGBTQ+. Thank you, Jonathan. Jocelyn and Ashley, the floor is yours. Please tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's this is my partner, Jocelyn. We both kind of came here tonight just to share a little bit about the work we do in our heart, and that's kind of what brought us together in the first place, and how we met, and sharing the same values and being able to do the same work together is something that drives us both, and is something that we love getting to do together as a team. We're lucky enough to work in an organization together in different departments, but all working towards the same goal in different ways. And it's just nice to be able to work with your partner and it not be a stress on your relationship all the time. So it's been really great. And it's been through the pandemic. So we've even had, on top of that, more challenging measures added to it, but we've kind of made the best of it.
Yeah. I love it when we have couples come onto the podcast and they're so cute because they're even holding hands and cuddling while everything is taking place. You could say it might be stress and one of you's really clenching on tight, but I know it's love itself. So that's fantastic. Well, there had to have been life before the pandemic for both of you. Are you both born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, or did you come here from elsewhere?
Yeah, so we were both born and raised in Edmonton. I haven't been outside. Actually, I've been outside of Canada one time.
Really?
So yeah, I was born and raised in Edmonton, in the North Side. So North Side, shout out. North Side still alive. Yeah, I have 3 kids, 2 adult daughters, and my son is 10.
Wow.
So that was a little bit of my life before COVID.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Ashley?
Yeah, so I was born in Edmonton and spent most of my time here as well. And I've had the ability and the privilege to be able to travel a bit more of the world. Definitely, I wouldn't say enough of it yet, but yeah, I started out and wanted to get out there and really experience life from other people's point of view and what other people experience. And yeah, so that's kind of a bit about me.
Yeah. Tales of the LGBTQ plus is available through YouTube as well as through the audio platforms, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I need to tell you something. Jocelyn just made mention of having 2 adult children, and I sit here with jaw dropped because there's no way in heck that the woman that I see here on my screen could have 2 adult children. So that's the first shocker of the evening for me. So Jocelyn, well done. Well done. So there was life before each other, and you mentioned having children. We are part of a podcast that does look at the rainbow community. We tend not to really stress that part because people's stories are what they are. But both of you, how are you part of this community? How do you identify today here in 2021?
Yeah, I would say we're both queer. I feel like we both came out later in life, and so we both have had previous relationships with men, and as I think you would identify as bi or pansexual, of looking at it more of, I think, a person rather than a gender. So I feel like we both kind of fall into that category, and yeah.
Yeah, I love that word queer now. I never liked it because it was a word used against me when I was growing up and for others. But more and more, when I talk to people, they're using the word queer, and it's taking that word back. And there's nuances within that word now, and I'm opening the door to liking it again as well. When I started the podcast, I wasn't sure if I should put that Q at the end because that word never felt right. But as I'm talking more and as I'm listening, I'm understanding it more. And it's interesting with where we're going with the community and identity and how that word gets used more and more. So, Jocelyn, did you know Ms. Ashley before you started work? Or was this a relationship that you had before coming to work? Or did this happen the day you saw each other?
Yeah, I did not know her at all until the day she walked through the door. Weirdly, I was her supervisor at the time. I was just naturally really drawn to her. and felt like attracted to her and just wanted to be around her and felt very safe and comfortable around her. So it just developed into like a friendship really quickly. And then I started to realize and kind of put a lot of things together. And where I was at in my life, I kind of had space to do that now, as I didn't have space to do that prior to like 2 months before meeting her. I feel like I wasn't in the headspace to even like entertain that. So yeah, that's how it all happened.
So everything went still. Everything went into slow motion. Ashley, living here in Edmonton, obviously was running down a beach in slow motion towards you,
Of course.
and life was good.
Yeah.
Now, you know I have to jump in on this because you've given me a little bit of an opening with headspace and mindset. And so was that realizing that you were falling in love with her or falling in love with a woman in general?
Yeah. Well, I felt like, I mean, we could like rewind a little bit since we have time. Let's dig a little bit deep. So for me, I always knew that I was more attracted to females, even as a child. But I'm older than Ashley quite a bit. So when I was growing up, I didn't really know a lot of people. The word queer, yeah, was very not good. I didn't even know, like, I just kind of thought that girls and girls like that was a fetish thing, that couldn't be real. So that's was kind of the messaging and the culture and the society that I grew up in. So I'm almost 40. So I just kind of did what I thought I was supposed to do, what all my friends were doing, even though like I always preferred that more. I just didn't even know how to do that. And I was a very shy, timid child. Like my mom would say, I would bring her to people's houses and she would just sit on my lap and wouldn't talk to anyone. So I was already very closeted in general, even just myself, never mind like my sexuality. So then I was the girl that like got pregnant, but no one thought I would get pregnant. Like it was just like total just negligence. And because I was raised in like a Catholic upbringing, I was like, I don't want to use the word brainwash, but it was ingrained in me that abortion is wrong, that that's a baby, you know, those types of things. So when I got pregnant, like I had already kind of been going down a bad road. I wasn't living at home. My mom had kicked me out. The guy that I was dating was like a drug dealer and he was 6 years older than me. And it was just a bad situation. And then I got pregnant and it just like, oh my gosh, now what I'm going to do, you know? And then that went south and I didn't learn my lesson, moved back in with my mom, started going to the bar like a typical teenager, got pregnant again. So then I had two babies, 16 months apart, at the age of 19, and wasn't with either of their dads by the age of like 21. So those relationships didn't last. Obviously, they weren't love, right? We were very young. And I never like enjoyed like being intimate also. Like it was very like just not good for me. I don't know. And I just kind of like, I don't know, was lost and moved back in with my mom. And my mom was like, go and party and live your life and all those great things. And it was really great. She was super supportive. And then I met the man that I was married to when I was around 23. And at that time, my confidence was like really bad. I didn't think anyone would want me. I was in really, really not good relationships. Like I wasn't a good partner either. Didn't know myself, very young, very immature. And he accepted me for my kids. And so for me, I was like, wow, like someone accepts me for my kids. And Like, that's what I need for my kids. I need to get it together because that's what everyone else in the world is doing. So then we ended up living together really quick and, being young, and then got introduced to someone in a church. And then everything changed because we gave our lives to the Lord. We started attending a church. And the shame began very early, but I didn't really know it was shame. I just wanted to fit in a place and be loved. And ultimately, they would say that God-shaped hole, they would say in the church and all that. I believed it all. I drank the Kool-Aid, and got married ultimately because they told me that God wouldn't bless us until we got married. So very shameful marriage from the beginning, and ultimately lots of good memories, and we have a son together, and he and I are great friends, but we just weren't good partners for each other, and ultimately at the end it was a really safe environment for me to come out to him, and I'm super thankful for that, even though it must have been super hard for him. There was clues along the way, of course,
This is always is.
And yeah, and he even said, I should have known. But he, it was a struggle. But when we finally got there, there was a place where I was able to come out to him, and tell him about Ashley, and say, I met someone at work, and this is how I feel about her. And I think that I have more feelings than just wanting to be her friend. And coming down to thinking about her in intimate ways, and where you don't think of, I don't think of my other female friends in that, most of them in that way, right? You mostly don't. So that was kind of the space that I was in about a couple months prior to meeting her, where my marriage was over. I was starting to see through all the BS of the church that I was in. I had enough with living a lie, because I thought I was ultimately living a lie because I wasn't being true to even God himself, right? Because I was having this facade. So yeah, the headspace that I was in when I met her, I think I was just ready to move on with my life and be true to myself and not really care if anyone judged me or cared anymore, because it wasn't really worth it, because I was drowning and wanted to drive my car off a bridge because I hated my life. And I love my kids and I love my family. And I know it's probably hard for my family to hear, but I did. I hated it. I hated going home. I hated being in that situation. I hated not being with a partner that I felt safe with and that I could, and so.
Where you could be your authentic self.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Well, Ashley, let's bring you into the story. We have a little bit about Jocelyn's background here, and I'm just going to believe that you were running in slow motion like a Baywatch video. I'm going to believe that in my mind. But you're coming into a new organization and you see your brand new supervisor.
Yeah,
Well, where are you at this point in your life?
I had just transitioned out of another job, and it was right at the beginning of COVID, and I have a little bit of a background in working in EMS, and so navigating the pandemic and what I wanted to do was a little bit of a bleak future, and so I was kind of just looking for something to kind of tide me over until we were kind of out of a global health crisis and I could go back to working in the medical field. And so I always have had a passion for working with our vulnerable folks. And so I thought, where better to work than a homeless shelter for our unhoused neighbors who have nowhere to isolate. And I have nothing better to do and all the time in the world now that it's shut down, and I didn't want to be isolated. So I started working there, and it was nights, and it was shift work, and it was sometimes 14, 15-hour night shifts where you're dealing with a complex needs group that provides its own difficulties and challenges, and walked in on the first day just not really knowing what to expect. And I've always said from the first day that I saw Jocelyn, like I said I was in love with her, and it's like the most cliche lesbian thing to say for us, but I just really was drawn to her from the moment. I was really attracted to the fact that she was a strong female leader and was able to kind of direct 30 some staff in the midst of a pandemic. She spent 84 hours and put together an emergency activation, and just seeing her care and love for the community was what drew me to her too. And so I think we really bonded over that. And the work we do is very team oriented, and so we have to rely on each other a lot to look out for each other and to have each other's backs. And so we just kind of grew into I guess just like really creating each other as our support system. And there's some shared trauma in there that bonds you real close, I think. And we've had some pretty like intense experiences with our safety in jeopardy, and dealing with some pretty intense situations. And I think you having somebody to debrief with every night was like a saving grace for me, because kind of, I think for you, just like your group right now in grieving, like you really need to rely on each other to kind of get through that, because it's a shared experience between everyone. And so it was kind of the same for us, where it's like we all are kind of in this together, and we're working nights in the middle of when the whole world is shut down, right at the beginning of the pandemic, where everything was uncertain and we didn't really know what the future held. And I feel like it was a very, you only live once moment of.
It was right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was the first ever shelter pop up. No one really knew what was going to happen. It kind of felt like the world was going to end. That moment.
It was very bleak a little bit at the beginning when we didn't know what the end result was going to be. And so
it was scary.
Yeah, I think for us, like, we really grew close together because of that. And I think that has been a good foundation for our relationship to grow off of. Because right away we really did have shared values and shared commonalities.
So Jocelyn earlier mentioned that her now ex-husband looked back and saw some clues perhaps to Jocelyn's authentic self. When you met Jocelyn for the first time, Ashley, did you pick up on those? Did you figure out what she was putting down at the beginning, or was this a conversation that you had as you were spending these 14, 16 hours getting to know each other?
Yeah, so I feel like I've had previous relationships with women and non-binary folks, and kind of under that umbrella. So it wasn't new to me, but it was definitely new to Jocelyn. And she was, just coming out of a 10-year marriage, and I was hesitant to put forward my feelings. And I definitely had feelings first, I think, and kind of was more forward first. But it was actually, it took a while for us to finally be working in separate departments, and it be a little safer for us to have it be appropriate to be together. And before we really ever, I think, disclosed anything, but it was an instantaneous moment where I feel like it was just
I feel like we became like best friends instantly.
Which is the best way to do it. Absolutely. My husband and I were the same way. That's the way to build a relationship. Ashley, did you come from a religious background as well? Similar to Jocelyn, different in any way?
Yeah, so my story is a little bit different. So I grew up in a family that was definitely not religious at all. And my family has a lot of trauma associated with that. And so they were actually pretty against it, but I was a pretty vulnerable kid. My siblings and I are quite a few years in age apart, and both of my parents are addicts. And so growing up, life wasn't very stable, and we moved every year at least, sometimes twice a year, my whole life. And so you live this transient life, in poverty and very isolated. And I really was looking for stability. And I remember, I think I was 5 years old, and my neighbors were getting on this bus every Saturday and going to this church. And my mom kind of thought of it as free daycare a little bit, as a free Saturday. And so off I go. And I ended up, meeting just really great people there who became community, who after I moved, I still had somebody I knew who was a friend. And it was, for a long time, it really was a safe haven for me. And it really was a community when I didn't have that. But similar ways where you really feel a lot of shame, like you're not good enough, and mistakes are scrutinized, and you can lose your position over a mistake. Meanwhile, we see pastors and not being charged with sexual abuse scandals, and here's a teenager who made a mistake and you're not allowed. And just those things really just always kind of stuck with me. And I even went to Bible college for a little bit of my life, because I always felt that I didn't grow up in a Christian household, and so I didn't know enough. I didn't fit in enough. I didn't know the Bible like Joe, who was a pastor's son. And so you just always felt not enough. And so I even went to Bible college and spent a lot of money on a degree that is quite useless. And but in that I got a lot of experiences and a lot of life experience. And I really learned during that my beliefs didn't line up with what evangelical Christianity it does, and that I was kind of coming to a point where it was okay. And at the time when I was there, I wasn't out at the college yet or to anyone, but I was kind of the safe haven for a lot of the queer students to be able to come and talk to me. And it was just kind of an eye-opening experience for me to try and be an ally while being closeted myself, and figure that one out. And so after I left, it was very soon after that I exited the church and left that kind of behind, and didn't really move forward with still coming out. I didn't know if that was the direction I was headed, but I think the day I walked into work that day and I saw Jocelyn, it was like I knew that was what I wanted. And so here we are.
And girl, you went for it as well, as it turns out. Tales of the LGBTQ plus, we record our conversations live on YouTube. Do make sure that you look for our future release dates using our Facebook, Twitter, and other social media. I make mention of that because we do have listeners who are viewing us tonight. You may add comments. You may add questions if you have any for Jocelyn and Ashley here tonight. We have a comment section here. Feel free to add ideas, thoughts. We can definitely bring that to Jocelyn and Ashley's attention as this conversation continues. Both Jocelyn and Ashley are wondering to themselves who are here tonight, because now there's a little bit of fear and worry and happiness in their face all in one. You both mentioned how you've met at this work site. It is a faith-based organization, so there is that religious aspect. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, but let's put that to the side for now and come back to that as our conversation unfolds. Both of you are wearing shirts here. And so for our audio listeners, can you just tell us what that shirt says and why is this an important topic for you to discuss and to help in overcoming for so many people?
Yeah, so our shirts say harm reduction, save lives. They're from a local artist. Lady Cox is her Instagram, and she's great. So this is an approach that we're very passionate about, working with very vulnerable folks that we work with, especially in the unhoused community. There's a lot of mental health and addiction. And in the opioid crisis that we are in, that has only worsened during COVID, it has become more and more important for agencies, individuals, just neighbors, to take it upon themselves to understand harm reduction and understand what that means. And I think there's been a common misconception of what that means. Historically, there's been a lot of stigma around it, and unfortunately that has not helped our cause. But ultimately, we're just reducing harm and in any activity, and understanding that activities that we all participate in every single day. I drive a car. There's many motor vehicle accidents out in Edmonton on the streets every single day. And so there's harm for me by getting into that car, but there are seatbelts. And so I can choose to wear that seatbelt and make that choice and reduce harm that way, so that the impact of the accident hopefully won't be as fatal. And it's the same approach that we use when working with vulnerable folks, especially when we're talking about drug use and substance use, is that coming at it from a compassionate side, where we see them as a human and not as the drug. We see them as a person who uses drugs and not a drug addict. There's different language that is part of harm reduction that's really important because of the stigma around it. And during COVID, unfortunately, it has made our folks very vulnerable. For us, we luckily have homes to isolate in if we are symptomatic, or if we are sick, or if we're feeling afraid or anxious to go out because of COVID and the risk, and even access to vaccinations. We can go into any pharmacy, but if you don't have ID, some places will turn you away. It's also not accessible to go to a pharmacy for everyone. And so there's lots of things that have impacted our community during COVID. And one of those is the closed borders, which has obviously helped the transmission of the virus, but it has also kept out a clean supply of drugs and a continuous supply of drugs. And so we're dealing with stuff on the streets right now that we've never really seen before. And the drug alerts that we're getting all the time and the ODs that we're seeing all the time are increased all the time. And, we're seeing people die because of it. And we've lost, 2 people in the last few days who were loved neighbors. And unfortunately, they were unable to have access to a safe supply. And it was, a contaminated drugs, and it killed them ultimately. And, there are things like naloxone, and if anyone here, I recommend go to your pharmacy and ask your pharmacist how to use it and get a kit. They're free. I know with needles, people are a little hesitant, but we're starting to have access to pilot projects that are bringing in nasal naloxone and things. So we really are trying to, pressure the government into taking this as a crisis. And we're seeing more and more overdoses every single day, just from access to, safe consumption sites have been closed down. The government has not wanted to support those at all. And it has led into such detrimental, fatal outcomes where we are losing people on the streets all the time. And, when you're able to see them as a person and you get to know them and you know their name and that they have a son and their story, you don't look at them as a drug addict anymore.
Amen.
They're more than just, what they ingest in them, but they have a story and they have trauma, and there's a reason that they're stuck in this cycle. And part of the cycle is shame. And so harm reduction in that is even just being able to provide a space where if you're going to choose to use, I would rather provide you with the safety to do it, because I value your life no matter what. It doesn't change. And so, working with the folks that we do, we see that every single day. We have street outreach teams and workers who are literally out there saving lives every single day that this pandemic has happened. And we've got less and less support from the government as we've kind of continued through, and it's just gotten, more difficult to manage. And so that's, I think, why we're so passionate about it, is because we deal with the consequence of the government not taking this seriously and not wanting to do anything.
Yeah, and we need these voices to be loud, and be louder when our people need that voice to be spoken. Safe consumption sites saves lives, period. Science, facts prove it. We need leadership at all times to be led by science and facts, and not just gut feelings, because that brings more shame and more harm to everybody. Ashley, you mentioned something before, and I want to go back to it because it's going to be important to listeners to understand. You're mentioning the border being closed and safe product not being able to come across. And so people don't understand the difference between a drug that is deadly and strange and has these variants differences, and safe drugs. It's not safe necessarily, but can you tell us how the definition behind that, and this could be Jocelyn as well, the definition behind this, and just what is the difference, because that helps bring down the stigma with those safe consumption sites.
Yeah, I think safe supply is super important. And again, it's something that is misunderstood and has a lot of stigma around it, because we're pretty much saying we're offering drugs to folks. And ultimately that is what we are doing. But when we have access to, pure heroin, for instance, Edmonton hasn't seen pure heroin in a couple of years on the streets. So anyone on the streets who thinks that they're, picking up down or heroin, it's actually not that, because we haven't had that come in for a very long time. And with the borders closed, dealers have had to make their supplies last. And dealers ultimately, at the end of the day, have to make money. So they're going to cut their drugs with very dangerous things that are not safe to be used. A lot of our folks who use drugs, they know their limits, and they're actually, we trust that they are autonomous and that they are in control of their own health and that they know what they need. And by allowing them that trust, we're really saying to them that, like, you're allowed to make choices for yourself. And that's such a dignifying thing. And so even if it is a negative choice, I mean, I make pretty not great choices on a daily basis.
You can swear if you want to. It's okay. You can swear. No worries there.
Yeah, pretty shitty choices on a daily basis. And we all have our own vices. I mean, there's so many things, but it doesn't make us any less deserving of care. And so when we talk about safe supply, we're talking about that we're actually being able to provide them with the knowledge that what they're consuming is actually what they're consuming. We have people on the streets right now who think they're consuming heroin, and unfortunately it is dangerous levels of fentanyl and carfentanil. And both of those are dropping people like crazy right now. And so when they think that they're making the choice to use one drug and they dose it up like they think, and it's another thing, are we giving them informed consent? Do they have the information to make that choice? Providing fentanyl testing strips to see if there's fentanyl in your supply. Because if you are going to make that choice, you should be able to know what it is. If I'm going to take a bottle of, I have a headache, I want to know what I'm taking before I just take it. If I have 3 pill bottles and they all look the same, all the pills look the same, I have no idea which one's which, and I pop one and it turns out actually it's maybe like my, Dexedrine, then my day is going to be a little different than how I planned it out to be. When people are mixing substances, it becomes even more dangerous. When we're talking about opioids as well, we're in an opioid crisis right now. And so because of that, we're seeing, like I said, so many deaths. And so naloxone being able to be used,
needing multiple kits per person
just to be able to bring them back, and sometimes not being able to. And I would say that's something that previously has not been as common. I think right now benzos are mixed in with a lot of the down that is coming on the streets, and a benzo overdose doesn't respond to Narcan. Naloxone only responds to an opioid. And so if any other substance is mixed into that, like a benzo, whether that's an Ativan or, things like that, Xanax, you're not knowing what substance you're taking, and it's not the substance you think. And so being able to provide safe supply will change that, because people actually know what they're taking, and they're able to make that choice. They're also able to do it safely, because they're in hopefully a safe consumption site, using clean rigs, clean harm reduction supplies. They have
maybe the possibility to go to rehab and go to detox.
Yeah, and it's evidence based that at safe consumption sites, by
do detox,
by just being there, that people will be more inclined to ask about detox and ask about coming off of drugs than they are by us pressuring them into a detox facility first.
Like we heard stories of clients that accessed the most recent space that have passed on now, but they went there every time to use, and then months later found out they passed on. So that's an example of one person that maybe their life, would be changed because that place could still be open, possibly.
Absolutely. Now, I mentioned earlier, before both of you came on, that my current contract keeps me away from talking politics as much as I normally would. So I have to couch this question a little bit by not saying the names of the political ones here, but we're in the province of Alberta, and we had a period of time under a more left-leaning government, whereas now we're definitely in a more right-wing party leadership at the moment. In these discussions about safe consumption sites, the current government has shown a lack of understanding. They've shut down sites itself. As the years go by, have you noticed the government at least opening their eyes and ears to this with safe consumption sites, or have you noticed them just wiping their hands and stopping the conversation? Where are we at when it comes to the government support and that type of conversation?
Yeah, I would say right now, under the current government that we are under, are we allowed to?
You are allowed. I can't, but you're allowed.
I'm just going to get my mug out here.
Oh, that looks very familiar. I think I might have something like that downstairs myself.
Just drinking my tea tonight.
Absolutely. Serve all the tea that you would like, my lady.
Yeah, unfortunately, under the government that we are under right now, it's profit over people, and it's so easy to be worried about the economy and the effects on it, but it has, again, evidence-based proven that safe consumption sites will reduce criminal activity. It will reduce overdoses. It will reduce the amount of, needles and things that are on the street. But they're not very willing to listen to the facts and the science, which we've learned throughout this whole pandemic. They don't like to listen to science. So we're not surprised, but I mean, we do have really great advocates in our government who are out there all the time. And Janice Irwin is our MLGay, and she is someone who is a true advocate for our vulnerable. And when we're talking about, the health of our economy and the health of our society, we're really looking at the least of those in that, because that determines our health. And by just brushing them out and pushing them farther, and I would even say in our municipal election that's coming up, the Conservative Party has very dangerous and hostile policies around our vulnerable folks, our unhoused folks, our folks who choose to use drugs, that, pushing them into detox is going to be the solution. And I don't know if, most people know an addict. Most people
Absolutely.
know someone who, whether it's alcohol or drugs or eating, there's so many different types of addiction, and unfortunately drugs have the stigma, and so when we're looking at kind of the humanity part of that we're really losing out on being able to move forward as a society. And I know our province, our city has talked about ending homelessness for a very long time, and it is possible. It really is, and it's housing. And unfortunately, the government also needs to be behind that. That is, housing is harm reduction. Housing is a basic right for anyone. And COVID has affected our unhoused neighbors. We've all struggled in COVID in our own way, whether it's isolation, being away from our friends and family, not being able to see our family, being unemployed. There's so many different struggles that we've all had. And then we look at our unhoused neighbors, and I mean, they haven't had access to a public bathroom because they've been closed down. Libraries have been closed down. They have nowhere to go if it's raining. And the government is still making plans to create hostile architecture in new, plans that they have to revitalize communities. And it is beyond me that we're looking at that as a revitalization, because our unhoused neighbors who live there and have always lived there and will be there, they're not in that conversation, and it's really unfortunate. So
Yeah, I want to throw in the group that I help organize every Friday, Pride Corner on White. We're out there because in a period of 10 months during the pandemic, at the first part of the pandemic, we had 8 unhoused LGBTQ plus youths commit suicide during that time. And it said between 40 to 45% of our homeless teens are part of the rainbow community. We need those places. We need those shelters. We need the people power to make sure that the kids are safe, unhoused kids are safe, everyone's safe. Of course, going into adulthood as well. I'm just going to let you be able to have a sip of that water if you want to bring that back on the screen, Ashley. Before we move on to the next part, I just want to bring a couple of notes up on the screen from some viewers here. We do have Alexandra, who is saying, just here to say I am so proud of my friends, Jocelyn and Ash, with a heart. Love you both, XO. And we also have another message here from Maya Hill, who says, glad I was able to catch this while it is still live. Love you, Auntie Joe and Ashley. Smiley face with a heart. So those are just some of the viewers who were watching us here initially, sending their love to both of you. So that is fantastic. Jocelyn, you mentioned how for a period of your life, you found support within the church, support in that regards. Are you still part of that background, that church, like as an everyday part of your life, or is it now just yourself having faith? Where are you at when it comes to this?
Yeah, so good question. When COVID hit, churches closed, right? So everything kind of shifted to online. And through that process of meeting Ashley and coming out, I really also had a lot of time to talk to God. And at that time, I feel like I had just come out of being really, really, really deep in the church.
Okay.
So, you know, I had been in the church for 10 years and then didn't have the church anymore because everything went to online. And when that happened, I went to a very large church. So I'm sure you've heard the stories, large church, it's very cliquey, you know, and yeah. So church shut down and then didn't have much communication. Obviously, everyone's doing their thing and the world's ending, right? So it kind of really, I came to this kind of crossroads of like, oh, this is weird because I was kind of, it was ingrained that you go to church and that's where you have your relationship and you go to prayer and you go to worship, you know. So kind of coming to terms with like what that looks like to me now. And kind of had some like God moments where I feel like, you know, I even felt like I said the words out loud, like, God, I'm gay. And I felt like God said, I know, like, it's okay. And so I felt like that's where I was about a year ago. And then really deconstructed what that looked like. Luckily, I worked in a really, really great, safe place with really great people that are not like the people I knew. So there was also space for that. So as of right now, today, no, I am not part of that community. I will never be part of that community. I was asked to leave that community. My family, we were all asked to leave that.
You were asked to leave the community because of the divorce.
Because of the divorce.
Not even just.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because of the divorce.
Yeah, because of the divorce. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the sexuality part is just a byproduct of it, but it was the divorce itself. Interesting. And the reason why I came back to the religious part there, it goes with my next question, because I definitely understand safe consumption sites. I know it's needed. I struggle mentally with the faith component that goes with that. In my head, and please teach me and correct my mental wires when I see an addict who is trying to overcome their addiction and I see potential religion thrown in, I worry that it's switching from one addiction to another. At least that's the way my wires cross in my head. And so I worry about that part. Can you tell me a little bit more about how faith can be played out in a safe consumption site, or is it not there at all?
I 100% think that faith can be in that, and I think it's what you believe. I feel like, at least for our organization, is that we are faith-based, but I feel like we're pretty progressive under that umbrella, and faith isn't brought up really ever unless a client is inquiring or has a question. But yeah, there's no pressure, but there definitely are organizations in the city that do add that element. And I think what I would say to that is that under the Christian umbrella, if that is what you believe, then you believe that everyone is born under God and that everyone is God's child. And framing it in that, even that metaphor of a child and what you wish for your own child is, even when they're making terrible decisions. And Joe has adult daughters and I have teenage sisters, and so I am very acquainted with difficult choices, and but still loving them and still trusting that they're not a bad person, or it doesn't make them anything, and just like it doesn't make me anything. And I think by just being able to frame it in a way where, again, it's humanity, where if you're really talking about, I don't necessarily find I fall under that umbrella, but when we're talking about, under the Christian umbrella, that we're talking that, we talk about unconditional love and we talk about things like that, and it's not practiced in the church. And the meaning of that has been very skewed. And so I think when we think of faith being brought into something like a safe consumption site, how faith has been traditionally played out in like our evangelical communities, I wouldn't say mixes with that, because we don't look at people as people. We look at maybe their choice before themselves, and we get to label and judge and shame. And I know for myself in the church, a lot of it is shame. And not being able to, have the freedom to trust yourself. And even for our story of coming out, having the freedom to just be ourselves. And being in a faith-based organization, there were moments when we were nervous of what that meant for us working under that umbrella. But there are ways to do it. And our organization has kind of shown that there are ways to do that. And that, there are so many things that I think Christianity has wrong when they talk about, unconditional love or pro-life or things like that are very one-sided and almost a contract binding you that you have to make this choice only. Otherwise, even for Jocelyn, her story of God's not going to bless your relationship unless you're married. Like it's just a little backwards that we're believing that there has to be this divine thing to happen by our choice and by our actions, and that we have to earn it. And we don't at all.
I was going to say, Jocelyn, beforehand, you were talking about age difference, and I just want you to know that in my relationship, I am 12 years senior compared to my husband, and it's great in many respects, but also knowing that the pension plan probably won't be there when I retire. He's got another 12 years of working while I'm sitting in Palm Springs or somewhere. So you've got this worked out well. So you and I, we're symbiotic on this.
Maybe we'll retire at the same time.
Let's do it.
Because we're 11 years, so Ashley's got a little bit.
Do it. We'll leave Ashley and work for us. It won't happen that way, of course, but we can dream.
Right. I just want to share my experience a little bit about harm reduction and the faith part.
Yes, please.
I feel like definitely growing up for me, and just even part of the church community and the people that I was associating with, was very frowned upon, like naloxone or clean syringes or anything like that, because that would be supporting their habit. And so that was a very shameful thing. We participated in some outreach, but we would never supply any things like that, because that would be not godly and things like that. So when I started to work in the downtown core, it made me very uncomfortable at first to give them out, because I was like, oh my gosh, like we shouldn't be doing this. It felt very shameful. But as I saw the need, that the shame part and everything kind of gets removed, and it becomes more about just helping that person with their basic needs. So the organization that we work for really focuses on just meeting the person where they're at and creating relationship, because that's how that person will ideally want to go to you and talk to you about possibly moving forward if they need help, instead of treating them like a number. So I mean, for me, with the harm reduction saves lives, like Jamie has made these shirts, bless her heart. Everyone should go check her out and buy one of her shirts, because she is so talented. She's made these shirts. So many people have bought them in Edmonton. You see them all around. Janice Irwin has one. We'll get you one, Doug.
Perfect. I love it. And also make sure that you send me the website.
I will.
For the way to be able to purchase this.
Perfect.
And I'll make sure it gets on social media sites.
And one of the things, like for me, that I think is important about even just wearing the shirt, there's multiple things. It's a huge conversation starter. Like, what is harm reduction? Because there's a lot of people that don't even know. Maybe we can inform them a little bit and make them see that it's not really about like judgment or what we think is better or whatever. It's just more about like giving a person like the right to clean needles, because it's like a right. They deserve that. Just like someone that needs a diabetes shot deserves a clean needle, or, an insulin shot. Like, it's no different. And then also, I think, like, wearing this and representing to this community that we serve, that we're an ally and that we're a safe person and we're here for you and we want to speak on your behalf and we care about you and we want to make a difference, rather than them, just like walking by. Like, maybe they see you wearing that shirt and they're like, oh, maybe that person has an naloxone kit, or maybe they'll help me. Maybe they care about us. Maybe they see us more than people, or, just some random person on the street. So I think it's like, it's just a huge supporter, just to show your support to the community. And like, also, like, write your MLA. Like, yes, Janice Irwin is fantastic, but like, she's the only person that is speaking up for naloxone and safe consumption sites. So like, if you're passionate about it and you want to make a change, like, write your MLA, show up to the protests, follow all the links on Twitter and social media, Facebook, Instagram, share all those things.
With the election coming, research, do your research.
Go downtown and see how bad it is. It's really bad. Carry a naloxone kit. Go to Mint Pharmacy right by 96th Street. They will give you a naloxone kit. They will show you how to use it. They're amazing there. So that's what I think. Like, I think it promotes what harm reduction is. It shows that we're an ally. And it's a conversation starter. Yeah.
All right. So definitely check that out as well. I need to show you another comment here, just a little boost in your sales as we come to the conclusion of our conversation tonight. Aaron Allen says, here to support the homies for life, 3 exclamation marks, the best teenage sister in the world. So there we go. We're making sure
Hi, Aaron.
that gets.
And Jordan.
Jocelyn, when you're talking, there's a lot of things that struck me, and it kind of comes full circle with our conversation. You talked about how your previous background with the church you're involved in, with needles and the shame of handing that out. And then you're like, it's needed. And you see people as human, and you overcame that shame of whatever that is. It strikes me because during this process that you're having working with the unhoused people, you're also building this relationship with this beautiful woman beside you in Ashley, and shame. And you're seeing that love is needed, and you yourself realize it's vital and that you deserve that. And so what has, and I'll first start this question with Jocelyn and then go to Ashley. What has the last 2 years meant to you as a person compared to where you were and where you're going in the future? Big question. I'm not going to charge you for that therapy moment, by the way, either, but
15, 16 almost.
16 months. So me and Ash have been together for 1.5 years. And it's been amazing. I've never felt so free in my life. Obviously coming out, but coming out with someone that I felt safe with, that loved me, that I love unconditionally, and that I get to like do life together with, and I get it to be excited every morning when I wake up. It's been so good. I love it.
Yeah, it glows. It's sickening. You're glowing, and the publicity picture that we had, you're glowing, looking at each other. Ugh, love. Ugh.
I know, so gross.
Yeah, even now we're just a little over an hour into the interview with each other, and you're still holding hands. Love is good. Yeah. Ashley, what about yourself? Yes, you've had experience before. You walked into a new job. You fell in love instantly. You're bringing part of your background, the EMT, into this new world, this transition as well. What has the last 2 years meant for you compared to the past?
I feel like similar. There's a lot of freedom. I really do feel that we were really privileged to work where we did during COVID and get to do the work that we did, because every day you have a purpose of why you do what you do. And, the community members that we just lost are exactly why we do what we do. And I feel like this last 2 years of the pandemic and in this sector, it's kind of changed what it means to show up to work every day, and what we see has kind of just increased into a territory that's new for us. And so we've had to deal with lots of different challenges and things that us as a city have never done in response before. There's been so many emergency activations at large scale that has brought a lot of the agencies in the inner city together, working together for the same cause that has never happened before. And so there's been so much good for us that we've seen. And I know that's ignorant a little bit of all of the negative, but we really have to kind of focus on some good with what we see day in and day out, and being able to build the foundation of our relationship on a friendship, and doing the same work, and kind of going through a lot of incidents together, whether it was responding to an overdose and opioid poisoning together, or having wheelchair parts broken off of a wheelchair and yielded at our heads, and us having to dodge and play a game for a little while, that you learn how to kind of laugh off some really negative things. And
we had a lot of fun.
You having somebody to ground you with the work that we do, and kind of the trauma that us as workers experience in this sector. Having your partner also be your debrief partner, the one after you lose somebody to an overdose, and you have someone to come home to who understands, and it's not something that they're like, oh, that sucks, but it's like, no, I've been there. And there's something with somebody saying, like, I've been there, and like I can be with you here through, like, with this. And I think the pandemic has taken a toll on mental health for everyone, and so to be able to just have kind of a safe haven, and talking about a little bit of like my background of being very transient growing up, and moving and finding a different community every year, and trying to meet new people, and to just have somebody who's very stable and can keep you grounded is really refreshing. And I think both of us have found a lot of freedom in being able to leave the church trauma and process even that together, because again, there's understanding. And even though we both were in the church around the same time, I left probably 4 or 5 years ago now, but Jocelyn had just left, but I had been in the church for probably 15 years. And so we had definitely crossed paths without knowing each other, been in the same building multiple times or the same events, and never once crossed paths. But we wouldn't be together now if we did back then. And so it really was just perfect timing. And we have some hard work to do that, and working nights was awful. And there's no one else that you want to be sleep deprived, depressed, and anxious through a pandemic with than somebody you love and somebody who loves you. So
yeah. Well, tonight we've been talking to Jocelyn Lapointe and Ashley Allen. I should also make mention of a third guest who we saw earlier. Who is that? Or who is it?
Well, that's our
Crazy
cat who,
Linus.
if anyone would like,
you can babysit him anytime
for free. Well,
lovely. I bring up the cats because I was in the middle of an interview once with a beautiful woman from Edmonton TOS Society, when my cat Bruce decided to make an appearance and knock the camera everywhere. The interview was trying to find the camera that had been knocked over, with my cat underneath batting it back and forth.
Oh no!
So those pets, those loved ones are great, but capital B-U-T in there as well.
Yeah.
He was a COVID companion. We got him during COVID and needed some extra love, and he's been here ever since and lives rent-free and lives his best life all day. And
probably does not pick up after themselves during the day, mops the floor, those type of things. Yeah, same as mine. The freeloader.
His name's Linus. We named him after
they are, that's for sure. Ashley, thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing your story. It's through listening to the stories that we learn about each other, we become more connected, and we understand that we're not so strange and weird. We're humans with a little bit of extra glitter to our glow, so to speak. If there's people listening here to this podcast and they want to help our unhoused folks, safe consumption site recommendations on how people can help in taking part.
Yeah, I would say write your MLA, talk to your MLA if you have a relationship with them, buy a harm reduction saves lives shirt, research organizations, research lots of stuff that's going on in Edmonton, because there's lots of things going on.
We're in an election, so take a look at those key points that the party's platforms have under housing. What is their housing platform? Are they making housing affordable? Are they creating affordable housing? Are they providing permanent supportive housing? Are they housing first focused, where they want, that's a priority to get everyone off the street and fast? I mean, we responded to the pandemic very fast and provided measures despite them not always being adequate. There were measures in place, and unfortunately we're in a crisis with our unhoused folks and an opioid crisis with no response. And so just, keep that in mind, that what is their policy on safe consumption sites? What is their policies on criminalization of drugs and incarceration of folks? I mean, people of color are incarcerated at a drastically increased rate over people who are white. I mean, even when you look at the history of cocaine and crack, it's the same drug, but unfortunately because of its association, that one is perceived as worse as the other. And it puts a lot of Black people and people of color in prison every single year. Whereas cocaine can be seen as a very privileged drug for white people who get to enjoy at a party at a bar on a Friday and experience not the same type of stigma and criminalization over it. And so just understanding that, like, there's so much that historically goes back into that. Look at defunding the police and looking into providing more supports than just policing. Even the history of policing and how our city is doing it right now, and things like that. Look at our healthcare system. We've been in a pandemic for 2 years. I think there's so many things that, like, we need to be more aware of. And I think with this election especially, there's more young people who are of age to vote, and young people are more connected to technology, are more connected to news, are more connected to what's happening in the world. And so take time and just get educated about that. And I think supporting agencies that are doing the work. There are so many different agencies all around the city that are doing the same work. And so look at donating, spring cleaning, fall cleaning, same thing. If you have clothes, it's starting to become winter, and
donate to your local
we have
agencies.
Lots of unhoused neighbors who, unfortunately, because of the government not wanting to fund anymore, we have shelters closing. And so we're moving into, our -40 temperatures with a winter that's looking a little bleak, and our COVID numbers still being high. And we have no place for our folks to go at night to sleep and have shelter from the elements. And so, I think donating to agencies, we always are taking, any agency I can say is always taking socks, underwear, things like that, hygiene items, anything that you're,
see how you can help
cleaning
someone.
out. Monetary donations are always appreciated and helpful. I think also just getting involved and using your voice, because unfortunately a lot of our unhoused neighbors, because of stigma, they're not brought to tables where they can have a say or have a voice. And so being aware of that and bringing them to tables to speak and allowing them to have a voice, and trusting that just like I know what I need when I'm feeling thirsty, so does that person. And so, trusting that we're all in control of our own health, and we are all the author of our own well-being, and whatever that looks like is different for every single person. And I think just recognizing that, kind of like you said, that once you get to know somebody's story, it's about connection.
Yeah.
It's been said before that, the opposite of addiction is not being sober, it's community, because it's really about connection and about creating a space where it's not shame, and that, oh, you struggle with what I do too, and I'm not so different.
Yeah.
I don't have to be ostracized because of this anymore, because
become an ally.
And just creating space to be vulnerable with people, and understanding that everyone has struggles, and not to invalidate anyone's struggle, but also just recognizing that there are people out there who definitely have more struggle. And so in our position of privilege in that, how can we help?
Yeah, absolutely. And so whether you're here in Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the world, you now have a homework assignment. You have a homework assignment to be educated with science, with facts, making sure and understand completely that harm reduction saves lives. Jocelyn and Ashley, thank you for coming here to Tales of the LGBTQ plus to share that very important message, but also to share your background and how you've come to this point individually and together as a couple. I hope that we're able to come together in the future, have more conversations, and when the time comes to see you both in real life, do know that you will have a COVID-safe bear hug from myself to both of you. So thank you very much for coming on to today's episode.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and again, Jonathan, thank you for putting both of us together as well. I'm going to put Jocelyn and Ashley onto our lower screen a little bit as I just do a goodbye to everybody for tonight. So a quick wave to Jocelyn and Ashley here as well. So thank you very much for listening to today's episode of Tales of the LGBTQ+. It's been a month, and I'm glad to be able to come back and share the stories. The beginning of the podcast, I was mumbling my words, and there's so much going on in real life outside of the podcast, and it's hard to put those processes in place as to what's going on. I mentioned our Pride Corner on White, which has been my heart for the last 3-4 months. And as I mentioned before, it wasn't meant to go for a very long time. And we're still there. There's a need. 8 unhoused LGBTQ plus youths committed suicide in the period of 10 months in that area. And so that we're out there creating a community, a dance party. When it's safe for you to do so, do know that there's a chosen family who's there with open arms, with a lot of love. Do know that there are safe places for you. Religion with me right now, it's rough. It's hard because the street preachers do actively try to come into the groups. Anti-trans, other things have been said, and it's tough. I mentioned off the top of the episode that last night we lost one of our team to suicide, and it was shocking and it hurts. For myself, I've seen death a lot coming out at the end of the AIDS crisis. I saw and went to many funerals itself. It's been a long time since the heart hurts like this. If you are listening and you are struggling, please know that there's places for yourself. Family, friends, organizations. If you feel strange and you need to talk to a stranger, here are some mentions. If you are a youth, we have on the screen the Kids Health phone numbers 24/7, 1-800-668-6868, or you can connect to the phone to the number 686-868. There's a trans lifeline, crisis and mental health support for trans people. The website is on your screen. If you're listening to the audio, translifeline.org, 1-877-330-6366. And from our friends at Altview, there is Edmonton's first mental health and wellness helpline for the LGBTQ2S+ community, available 24 hours. They are called Brightline, BRITELINE. Their website is their name.ca. The phone number 1-844-702-7483. I'll be sure to include all of this information wherever this podcast is being sent out, wherever you can see. I'm going to make sure that we include all the information that our guests tonight, Jocelyn and Ashley, provided, because safe harm reduction sites is vital. It's important. We need that knowledge, we need that understanding, and we need that safe space. And as an ally, as people, we have to raise our voices. We have to speak up. We have to make sure that we create the space for people who do not have the voice at the moment. Yeah, that's me preaching, but I do hope you hear those words as well. Our youth who passed away was Two-Spirit, continues to be Two-Spirit. He's in our heart no matter what. Hope he said, "Don't be afraid to cry. It will free your mind of sorrowful thoughts." Tomorrow night on Pride Corner, we will have grief counselors there. We are there dancing, showing love. We will be able to cope in our way. How that happens, it's fine. Safe, loving arms. And as I mentioned early with Duamish, there is no death, only a change of worlds. Bailey, as you transition into the new world, you're loved. I hope for you that your wings fly high, because your wings here on earth are going to be seen forever. So as you move on to the new world, go and kick some ass. Your heart was full here on earth, and your heart will ever fill ours. So thank you, Bailey. Thank you for that. On behalf of Jocelyn and Ashley, my name is Douglas Parsons, thanking you for listening to tonight's episode of Tales of the LGBTQ+, reminding you to be good. And please text whenever you need us. Please text when you get home. Until next time, everybody. Good night.